The first Democratic debate covered a lot of ground and with a lot of people, 5 moderators, 10 candidates in all, who packed the stage, making for plenty of chaos.
Mayor de Blasio, I want to jump in here for a follow-up. Mayor de Blasio, you're using
we have to actually...
Congressman Delaney, you'll have some time in a moment.
I think we had a little mic issue in the back.
What's happening?
If the control room can turn off the mics of our previous moderators.
Better them than me. Hopefully they have that worked out by tonight. But amid all the confusion, there were some standout moments, too.
I want to return government to the people, and that means calling out the names of the monopolists and saying I have the courage to go after them.
This economy has got to work for everyone. And right now we know that it isn't.
I know the importance of our national security, as well as the terribly high cost of war.
If you need a license to drive a car, you should need a license to buy and own a firearm.
Watching that image of Oscar and his daughter Valeria is heartbreaking. It should also piss us all off.
That last comment, of course, is a reference to the photo we all saw this week of the father and daughter who drowned trying to cross the Rio Grande. And by many accounts, it was that last contender, Julian Castro, who gained the most ground in round 1. But the biggest surprise to many were the 2 people whose names didn't really come up much at all. Those of Democratic frontrunner Joe Biden and the man in the Oval Office, Donald Trump, which probably explains the latter's reaction to the 2-hour event on Twitter. Boring, he tweeted. I have to admit, the whole thing kind of reminded me of my days in Cambridge City Council debates. Joining me now are a couple of fellow debate pros, former Congressman Michael Capuano. He's now Public Affairs Director at Foley and Lardner LLP. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Current Boston City Councilor Lydia Edwards. Great to see you.
Thank you.
By the way, neither of you have a candidate, do you? Have you endorsed
Not yet.
anybody?
Oh, no.
Nothing? Okay.
No.
Anything that happened last night, Lydia, that you think will have a lasting impact on this campaign? Any moment, anything that was said, any exchange?
You know, honestly, I think it's so early. A lot of people are still trying to figure out who these people are. I couldn't have named all of them on the stage personally. So were there some standout moments for several people? Yes, but there are some also kind of blah moments as well. So you don't really win debates. You just hopefully survive them.
Any lasting moment for you, you think, that'll linger well beyond tonight at 11 o'clock?
Not until the general election. I think that in general, I agree with Lydia that nobody won, namely they're going to get elected tomorrow. Nobody lost. Nobody's out of the election. I do think there were those who did a little bit better than expectations. Julian Castro, Cory Booker, de Blasio. I think those maybe one that didn't do as well as expectations, namely Beto. But I think everybody else pretty much held their own. And I think nothing will be determinative.
Well, I asked you if you thought there was a moment that might last. I think there was one that didn't get much play that might last. It was in response to a question that Lester Holt asked a showing of hands for. Here is the question.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Who here would abolish their private health insurance in favor of a government-run plan? Just a show of hands, start off with.
I assume you at home saw Bill de Blasio, mayor of New York City, on the left, and Elizabeth Warren in the middle. The reason I say that, Councilor, is as recently as a month ago, I'm watching a CNN town hall, and someone raised their hand and asked Elizabeth Warren a question about, well, wait a second, you support Medicare for all. Do you support the elimination of private insurance? And she, in a nanosecond, said, no, I support many paths to Medicare for all. That might be one of them. Last night she was singing a different tune. A minute later she says, I'm with Bernie, meaning no private insurance. That's a pretty risky position to take.
Yeah.
Is it not?
Yes, and it's a bold one to take, and it's something that I think we're starting to get used to seeing from her and appreciating. Honestly, I feel that her growth on a position is different than saying I'm two-faced about it. So I think that's actually a good thing for her. I think it's a good thing also the public appreciates transparency from straight on. So if she stays this course, I don't think it's ultimately going to hurt her. I think it's going to, as long as she stays this course and doesn't backtrack on it.
Could it hurt her? I mean, I can see a Donald Trump in a debate or when the field is winnowed down, even a Democratic opponent who's not as progressive as she, to use a word, saying, wait a second, she wants to get rid of your private insurance, which many of you like.
Look, I think Democrats made a mistake years ago when we did health insurance, that we didn't talk about about the 70 to 80% of the people who did have insurance. We only talked about those who didn't. I think what we did was pretty good, considering that. But we still should have
You were in Congress then, for those who don't know at home, of course, yeah.
I still think we should have voted for it, absolutely. But I think we should have talked about the people that had health insurance. In this case, I don't know the exact number, but it's in the 60 to 70% range of all Americans get their insurance either from their employer or their union, and they like it.
So did she make a mistake last night?
I won't say it's a mistake. I mean, if that's what she believes, I deeply respect it. But politically, I think it's going to be a difficult thing to sell to many Americans.
Well, you know, beyond that, many of the analyses this morning didn't necessarily say it critically, but observationally, that the whole crew, with a couple of exceptions, but the core of the Democratic Party candidates have moved pretty far to the left. Now, my radio co-host, Marjorie Egan, would say, well, what was once the left is now mainstream. But for the average voter in Iowa or somewhere else, what is mainstream to us may not be mainstream. Has the party already moved too far to the left, even a year and a half before an election?
Look, I don't think that they're running on anything that's not popular. You know, the fact that leftist policies might be popular right now, that's what they're running on. I mean, they've moved to where the populists are demanding answers to questions about the system in general, about the 99%, about, you know, health care. They're asking about climate change because those issues are popular. And if those are leftist issues, then the party should go where the people want answers.
You buying that?
Well, I've always thought the party they will go wherever the members of the party want them to go. What's too far left? Again, the voters will make that decision. But the voters did have a voice in the last election. And I know that a lot of the media has played the extreme left members who've been elected. There were more members of the Blue Dog Coalition.
You mean in the midterms?
In the midterm election. There were more members of the Blue Dog Coalition elected for the Democratic House than there were new members to the Progressive Coalition. And I don't know what that says, but the Democratic Party has always been, and I proudly think it's a broad-based party. We don't have litmus tests for who a Democrat is. That is decided at primaries. And I think the same is going to be here. So when you ask if it's too far left, that's a personal opinion of whoever you're asking. I think that's what elections are about, and I think we'll find out.
You know, the one question that I thought was really important last night that no one, in my opinion, had a decent answer to, and I'm not sure there is a decent answer to, was the operational question, not the visionary question, is there's a guy in Congress, in the Senate, who you have to figure out how to get around, likely. The question in this particular case was asked of Cory Booker, but it was really asked of all of them. Here's the question.
Senator Mitch McConnell says that his most consequential achievement as Senate Majority Leader was preventing President Obama from filling a Supreme Court seat. Having served with Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, do you believe they would confirm your court nominees?
Am I too lost in the weeds to worry about an answer? I know don't say, I know the election's a long way away, but the reality is, if you were a betting person, there's a pretty good shot there'll be a Democratic president and a Democratic House of Representatives, and there's a pretty good shot that the obstructionist in chief, Mitch McConnell, is still going to be running the Senate. It doesn't matter how good your ideas are, if you can't figure out a way to get around him, you got a problem, no?
Yeah, well, look, the fact is people don't vote that deep in the woods. They vote for the candidate they want, and they believe that that candidate is going to push a vision and an agenda that they want. The fact that Mitch McConnell or anybody else will be an obstructionist to that agenda is not what voters care about right now. They want to know what the agenda is. What are you fighting for? So at this particular point, whether they can play nice with Mitch or not, I don't think anyone cares. I think people really honestly want to know who this person is who truly believes they should be running the country.
You buying that too?
I agree that the average voter doesn't care and probably never will, but they really, 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 really should. Yeah. And to me, that's one of the reasons why I tend to find people who know what they're doing. Politics, I know you're not supposed to ever say...
candidates who know what they're doing?
Politics, you're not supposed to say it's a profession, but it is. And it is because there are certain ways to get things done. And it is one thing to be in a monolithic state like Massachusetts, we're all Democrats. Here, the fights are amongst Democrats. We're all in the same chapter of the same book, maybe on the same page, but we're pretty close. D.C. is a different story.
I heard we had a Republican governor once, too.
Yeah.
We do. That's right. Sorry. Yeah.
Different kind of Republican.
Okay, fine.
And I think everybody would acknowledge it whether you like him or not. All that being said, in Washington, I actually think it was a great question, but probably not appropriate for the reasons Lydia said, that the average person won't get it. But that is something in the back of your mind you better keep there. You can say anything you want, but if you can't get it done, what good is it? And if you're going to get it done, you may have to get it right. If not Mitch McConnell, it'll be somebody else.
So I probably shouldn't have obsessed over this all night last night.
Think about it this way.
I think you should have.
It recently came up with Joe Biden trying to present that he was more qualified and able to work across the aisle. And then the examples who he picked of who could work across the aisle were segregationists. So maybe they don't want to bring up Mitch McConnell and how well they're going to work with him because of certain policies and things that he's pushed for. So at this point, maybe they've learned from Joe's, I think, mishap in using those two individuals. I would also argue
there's ways to work with somebody, but if the person refuses to be worked with, and McConnell has proven repeatedly does not want to work, there are ways around people, which then means, for the sake of discussion, if your scenario is right, Republicans hold the Senate, fine, I'm not going to deal with Mitch McConnell, I'll do the best I can, but probably not going to win. But there's still going to be 51, whatever the number is going to be, Republican senators. You should be able to find a couple on a regular basis that you can find a way to get.
Well, we're going to return to McConnell in a second because I think it becomes important tonight because of what happened today. We all know there are more from the front-running crew in tonight's debate. Joe Biden's had a shaky couple of weeks. I think most people would agree. Bernie Sanders may be in the process of being passed by our own Elizabeth Warren, and Pete Buttigieg has understandably and arguably deservedly had a really tough time at home. Here he is at a town hall meeting in South Bend on Sunday.
Get the racists off the streets. It's disrespectful that I wake up every day scared.
If anyone who is on patrol is shown to be a racist or to do something racist in a way that is substantiated, that is their last day on the street.
He had a pretty smooth road, then all of a sudden there was a white cop who killed an African-American in his hometown. I assume that's going to come up tonight. But it seems to me, getting back to the McConnell thing, the reason why that question is even more important tonight is because of pretty important, well, two important decisions were made today by the Supreme Court of the United States. One, I think, has huge impact. The gerrymandering case, which by a 5-4 decision was controlled by the conservatives. The reality is they can't avoid getting back to, in my opinion, the McConnell question, because I can see a situation where one of those Democrats is president, and at the beginning of his or her 4 years, Mitch McConnell says, I'm not having hearings on any of your nominees for 4 years. Sue me. Tell me what you're going to do. What do they say tonight about that?
What do they say about
a Supreme Court nominee? Again, if Mitch McConnell is running the show in the Senate. He did it with Merrick Garland. No one thought he could say a week or two ago that he would confirm a Trump nominee, even if it was in the last year. So arguably he can say, I'm not going to confirm any Democratic nominees for 4 years.
Or at least bring them up to a hearing.
Or bring them
if
up
we
to
have the numbers, then we can't vote on something that he won't allow at a hearing.
So despite what you said a minute ago, Councilor, don't they have to be able to answer that question tonight in light of what happened today? Or am I
still say the average voter doesn't care about that right now. So no, they need to prove that they are even worthy of being on the stage against Donald Trump. That is their sole focus right now in this debate, the next debates, and the conversations coming up. Some of them can't even get on the stage, like Representative Seth Moulton. There is, right now, people are trying to figure out why 20-some-odd people feel that they should be on that stage, and that's where their focus is. Yes, at the end of the day, in November, the clinching argument will have to be who can get it done.
But that's a long way away.
That's a long way away.
You have final 15 seconds.
In the movie Lincoln, there's several scenes where Lincoln's getting, I think it was the 14th Amendment, and if you remember correctly, he had to give, I think, a senator or somebody a job as a postmaster or whatever it was.
To get a vote.
The average person hates that. They hate the log rolling that goes on, but they love the result. And you can't talk about that at a debate. You can't talk about that in public. But I agree with you that if Mitch McConnell is going to be the leader of the Senate, I do agree that any Democrat's going to have to find a way either to work with him, which I think is probably impossible, or to go around him, and there are ways to do it. They're not necessarily the kinds of things you can talk about in genteel populations.
Oh, I'd love to have that non-genteel way.
You're not part of that genteel conversation.
Congressman, thanks so much for your time.
Always a pleasure, James.
Appreciate it.